we have several speakers for you now, and I anticipate them coming up in this order. After me, Chief John Drake of the Nashville Police Department. He will be followed by United States Attorney Don Cochran for the Middle District of Tennessee. He will be followed by Mickey, that's M-I-C-K-E-Y, French, Special Agent in charge of the ATF for this area. He will be followed by Matt Foster, the Special Agent in charge of the Nashville FBI office. And then Nashville Fire Department Chief Director William Swan will speak to some operations that are taking place on 2nd Avenue. Chief John Drake.
Thank you, Don. Good afternoon. This morning, around 5:30 a.m., officers responded to a call for shots fired in the downtown area, specifically 2nd and near Commerce. As officers responded, they encountered an RV that had a recording saying that a potential bomb would detonate within 15 minutes. Officers, upon hearing that, decided to evacuate the buildings nearby. So they began knocking on doors, making announcements, having emergency communications, communicate with everyone to get people safe. Shortly after that, the RV exploded. We had one officer that was knocked to the ground. Another officer is fine. Currently, what we have going on now is we have K9 dogs. All of them are out, partnering with Tennessee Highway Patrol, our federal partners, and we're sweeping the downtown area just as a precaution to make sure that everyone is safe and that, any service that needed, we can provide that. And so with that said, we don't feel there's any concern in the downtown area of anything else right now, but we are doing it as a precaution just to search with our bomb dogs. At this time, I'll turn it over to Attorney Don Cochran.
Good afternoon and Merry Christmas. Unfortunately, this is not the way any of us wanted to spend our Christmas morning, I know. But I'm Don Cochran. I'm the U.S. Attorney here in Nashville, Tennessee. This morning I briefed the Acting Attorney General, Jeff Rosen, on the situation here in Nashville, and he has told me to tell the police chief in Nashville that we are devoting the entire resources of the Department of Justice to help in their investigation. FBI and ATF are taking the lead in this investigation, and I want to turn the stage over first to Assistant Special Agent in charge Matt Foster of the FBI, and then Special Agent in charge Mickey French of the ATF to explain some of the resources that the federal government is going to bring to bear on this situation. Matt.
Thank you, Don. The FBI stands with the city of Nashville today in this very tragic Christmas Day event. This is our city too. We live here, we work here, and we're putting everything we have into finding who was responsible for what's happened here today. As part of doing that, there are investigative leads to be pursued. There's also technical work that needs to happen, and we're standing with Metro Nashville Police Department and our federal partners and our state partners to bring every resource we can possibly bring to bear to find out what happened here today and to bring those responsible to justice. The investigative leads, I'm sure you understand, is not something that we can talk about. As we continue to pursue every tip, I would ask the public to go to www.fbi.gov/Nashville. It's www.fbi.gov/Nashville, where an online tip submission process has been set up. Please tell us what you know. We need your leads, we need your help. You can also call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Call in tip information if you know anything about what has happened here today. We'd appreciate your help. On the technical side, our focus will be on bringing the technical experts of the FBI from across the country, including the FBI laboratory, our hazardous devices school, and our experts from evidence response teams nationwide into Nashville to help process this massive crime scene, along with the ATF, Metro Nashville PD, and the many other partners who were part of this effort that will continue. We will find out what happened here. That's all.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mickey French. I'm the Special Agent in charge for the ATF Nashville Field Division. ATF is continuing to be a critical partner with the Metro Nashville Police Department as well as our federal counterparts. ATF responded this morning with several groups and personnel from the Nashville Field Division. We've also activated our national response team. That particular team is made up of specialists as well, certified explosive specialists, chemists, engineers, as well as evidence recovery, interview teams, and so forth. We'll be coordinating that with Metro Nashville Police Department as well as the FBI, and we'll put together a team that is going to collectively work this investigation to the fullest. Our main priority is obviously to keep our Nashville citizens safe and secure, and we'll work jointly with everybody here to do that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to give you just a quick update. I know Don earlier had mentioned as far as the fire department's role at EMS, we did transport 3 individuals with minor injuries, but right now what we're doing is with our structural engineers, along with our urban search and rescue, hazmat teams, we're going into the buildings, making sure, number one, that the building is sound and ensuring that there are no other victims or anyone that are there. So a lot of moving parts. Again, my hat goes off to all the teams working together as one unit, and we'll continue to work on until the job is done. So thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the update as we know it at present. If there is another briefing for this afternoon, we'll let you know. But you pretty much know what we know at this juncture as far as our community is concerned. Again, to reiterate, we know of no other imminent danger to the city at this point. The bomb dogs going through the downtown area now are doing that as a precaution. Okay? I can't hear you, Harriet.
Do we have a number yet of maybe an estimate of how many buildings have been damaged in this incident?
I'll talk with Joseph Pleasant from OEM. I can tell you that several of the buildings on 2nd Avenue have structural damage. Several of them have been damaged, some more than others. But we'll get that for you. I know that, as Chief Swan said, the fire department's looking at those structural issues now to determine any more potential impact.
Bottom line, Don, at this point, do you know the target? Do you know the purpose of why this happened?
As the FBI said, we will find that out. There are a number of people working right now on Christmas Day running leads throughout the city. From our police department, the FBI, ATF, answers will be forthcoming. We can't discuss those with you now or exactly what we're looking at, but answers I'm sure will be forthcoming.
Don, was there a body found?
I have no information about any body being found. We do not know whether anyone was in the RV when it exploded. We do not know whether anyone was in the RV when it exploded. So I can't tell you at this point whether there's a potential for a fatality in that scenario.
The megaphone that was warning people to leave, do we know if that was coming from the truck? Was it coming from somewhere else? Do we know?
It is believed it was coming from the RV.
Coming from the RV.
Yes.
Or was it someone saying?
There were announcements coming from the RV, and that's the extent of what we can say at this point.
Is there any surveillance footage that police are investigating right now?
There are cameras throughout this downtown area. Yes, we have been reviewing downtown cameras, and that is all part of the totality of the investigation.
Don, you mentioned some people people may have been taken to Central Precinct, whether they were just witnesses to give a statement, to share what they saw. Has anything come to fruition from that you can share?
Just providing more pieces to the puzzle, more information. As Chief Drake said, we had a number of officers, several officers on 2nd Avenue who were working to protect the public when the explosion occurred. As he said, one of those officers was knocked off his feet. We have some counselors with our officers. Our behavioral health folks are with those officers, ensuring that they're okay. They went through a very traumatic experience themselves.
Can you speak to just, really, it's amazing how these officers and first responders run into the face of danger. They knew, according to that RV, that there was some kind of threat, and they continued to take their time to get people out.
Well, they went to the residential areas on 2nd Avenue and did their best to get people to safety. Obviously, they heard the announcements coming from this vehicle. They took them seriously and were working to seal the streets, to protect folks, and we think it worked. We think lives were saved by those officers doing just that. All right, thanks very much, folks.
Don, can we ask one final question, just really quickly about the location? It's close to AT&T. There's a lot of talk about AT&T, especially with the servers in one building. Is there any thought right now that it was related to targeting AT&T?
The vehicle explosion occurred outside 166 2nd, the AT&T building. We do not know if that was a coincidence or whether that was the intention.
To talk about what it was she saw, and this, folks, is very interesting. Let me make sure we've got her on the line. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. If you would, real quickly, could you please give us an idea of where you live, proximity to this RV, and then we'll get into what happened this morning.
Okay, I live at 166 2nd Avenue North. That's the building where the melting pot is located and Rodizio. And the RV was parked right outside of our window. We're on the 3rd floor, and the RV was directly across the street from our apartment.
Okay, so now let's go to what you told me and what I know authorities are looking into as well. It was around 5 or 5:30 this morning that you were awakened, and walk me through it, to the sound of gunshots initially?
Exactly. Between 5 and 5:30 a.m., we heard very loud gunshots, repetitive, like 5 to 6 shots. I'm not sure, but very loud, and that woke us up. But we only heard it for a minute, and we just thought maybe, you don't know. You live downtown, you hear things. We've been living there for 15 years. Well, about 5 minutes later, we heard it again. And then I realized, and it was in the same place right outside of our window, basically on the street. So I called 911 for the first time at 5:32 this morning was my 911 call to say that I had heard gunshots. Well, then I went downstairs. We have a 2-level apartment, and I looked out the shades of my window, which I was a little bit afraid to raise because of the gunshots were so close. And I saw an RV directly out front across the street. And I began to hear a broadcast from, like a recording coming from the RV. And it was saying, this vehicle has a bomb. If you can hear this message, you need to evacuate. And all that was happening, and it was still, that went on for about 30 minutes. But then the RV message changed and said, you have 15 minutes to evacuate. And then we heard 14 minutes. Well, I went downstairs and I looked out on the sidewalk, and I saw that police were at both ends. By the way, I did see a police officer earlier between 5:30 and 6 a.m. walk around the RV.
Okay, so
911 told me that police had responded.
So they had responded, and we'll take it from there then. So what you're saying you heard at some point, and maybe this was something law enforcement had already been alerted to, was some kind of an announcement coming from the RV. I think you mentioned to me, did you not, it sounded recorded, a male voice, but you never saw any individual inside the RV.
No, I couldn't see inside the RV. It was parked facing in an opposite direction, so I never saw the windshield. And, I was listening to something that I think you guys just played on the news, and now I'm not as positive it was a male voice, but it was definitely a recorded voice.
A recorded voice, okay.
Consistent, saying, evacuate this area. This vehicle is a bomb. It has a bomb. And then it started the countdown, and the last count we heard was 8 minutes, and we were in our cars driving across the river. But then it didn't go off until sometime after that.
Okay, so yeah, do you think you made it across? You went over to Nissan Stadium, maybe in the parking area there.
We
The
did,
countdown.
and watched our building, and we were looking right at our building, and we knew we couldn't hear the countdown at that point, but we knew from the time that we left, 20 minutes had passed, and there hadn't been an explosion. So we started driving back. We came back across KVB Bridge, and we're going to turn down 2nd Avenue. In fact, we made it almost down. We were on 2nd Avenue. Headed towards Broadway, but not quite to Broadway, and that's when we saw the explosion.
So at that point, you thought, hey, this may have been some type of hoax, and then boom,
Right.
it went off.
Yeah, we thought it was over, and
Wow.
then it happened, and then we just pulled over, and of course, by that time, everything was blocked off. And
wow. Do you know, by the way,
we're in a hotel now.
Just to ask you this, do you know, were there other residents in the building, to your knowledge, that got out safely, perhaps, or?
Not in our building is a vacation rental business. We run that. Now, 2 of our family members are here. We have, and we got them out with us. They were in separate apartments, but they came with us. So the only 4 people in our building got out.
Had you not gotten out, do you think you would have been harmed?
Oh, definitely. You all been showing it on here. We're the building straight across from the explosion. The whole front of our building is blown up.
So you might have been killed. You might have been killed if not for that warning.
Yes, if not for the warning. If that person had just detonated that bomb with no warning and no gunshots, we would have been either very seriously injured or killed.
Let me ask you this,
whoever
too.
did this,
As someone who's familiar, obviously, very familiar with 2nd Avenue, the fact that there would have been an RV parked there along that stretch on Christmas morning, not that unto itself, by itself, just sitting there, is not all that unusual, would it be? There were other vehicles parked on the road. That wouldn't have been suspicious by itself, would it?
No, it wouldn't have, and especially because it's the holidays and people know that parking's not being enforced. I would have assumed that was some family visiting somebody, and they just parked their RV there.
So it's your belief then that the early response from law enforcement, and obviously how you were able to get out of there, is because of combination, the gunshots, which really right now we can't really explain what those were all about, and then the warning from the vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah, the gunshots, and I mentioned this before, and I'm not sure of this, but the gunshots were so loud, there is a possibility, we've wondered now if they weren't a recording that came from the vehicle as well.
Interesting.
We don't know that, but as we've reflected back on it, because we heard it 3 times, it was exactly the same. We wonder now if we weren't listening to a recording, but we don't know. But the gunshots definitely is what woke us up. And then, because the recording I don't think would have been loud enough to wake us up if we hadn't heard the gunshots.
Of course. By the way, do you have any inkling, and not something you would have necessarily noticed, but how long had the RV been there? Was it there earlier in the day? Do you think it just showed up overnight? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was not. I went out yesterday morning. I went to do a little last-minute shopping, and I don't remember seeing it then. I feel like I might have noticed because the street was pretty dead. There were a few workman-type cars there, but I didn't notice it, no. So I don't know.
And by the way,
I didn't take a picture of it or anything.
Sure. Well, why would you, of course? And can you give me, though, kind of a description of it? An older RV, a new one? Is this one of those where there was a camper attached to a pickup, or how would you describe it?
No, it was a single vehicle. It was definitely one vehicle.
Okay.
Like a bigger kind of RV. It wasn't all beat up looking, but it wasn't new. It wasn't one of those slick-sided ones. It was more of an older one. But it was large. It was a large RV, and it was an older one.
Now, do you have any idea when you'll be allowed back into the area? And for now, I assume you're elsewhere.
Yeah, we're at a hotel now. Honestly, it's very difficult to tell. I don't know which building for sure is ours that you're all showing on the film, but I know all of our front windows are blown out, our apartment's blown out. I can't imagine that we'll be back in for days, and we didn't come out with anything but the clothes on our backs and pajamas.
And again, since you're very familiar with that area, we know there are restaurants and clubs there. Can you think of anything there in your mind, and I'm just asking you as a citizen who lives in that area, that would have been a potential target?
No, I can't. Our thought was they must be after the AT&T building. That was our thought, just because, that's where they were parked on that side of the street. They chose not, thank God, to go down to Broadway and destroy everything. So, our thought was they must have been aiming for the building that they parked close to.
Gotcha. Well, that's certainly something I know law enforcement will be going to look at, and that's just speculation right now. But listen, ma'am, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm so glad you were safe, and hopefully what you've shared here, and along with authorities, will help in the investigation of this case. But thank you, ma'am, so much for your time.
I want to start with the picture that was just released by the Nashville police of the RV that was driven into the scene. Rather remarkable shot, pretty clear of the vehicle, not unexpected given the number of cameras that are down there in that downtown area, a big tourist district. What do you make of the RV and also the timing? It arrived hours before the blast occurred at about 1:22 in the morning a.m., hours before the explosion.
Yeah, so the first thing that happens is when you come on the scene, after the police have secured it, you're looking at, well, was this a device that went off? And so when you take a look at the bomb seat, the blast seat, and you take a look at the radiation of the blast itself, it's consistent with a high explosive as opposed to a fuel line. Second, you want to take a look at, well, are there any other victims in the area? You want to make sure that you've basically accounted for everybody. And the other thing, very, very important, is to have an investigation as to whether or not there are any secondary devices. So that's being done now. Now the step comes into the forensic aspects of it to try to determine intent. What was this? And that will be pieced together from the debris at the scene, if they can find pieces of the actual device itself. And then you take a look at circumstances, which is what your reporting has showed. So it's in front of an AT&T building. Is it an infrastructure attack? Is it someone who used to work at AT&T and now is a disgruntled employee? But what's really curious about this is obviously the recording. So what we have not seen in the Islamic terrorist attacks is that you had a device that went off with the goal to have maximum injuries. Obviously, if you warn people about that, that's more akin to the IRA attack in London, where they actually made phone calls ahead of time in the 1970s. So again, was this a revenge attack? Was it specifically against critical infrastructure? Or was it just something to show that, no, we can do this?
Mm-hmm. You know, some of the experts that have spoken throughout the day have kind of talked about this as being not an intentional act of injuring people, but at the same time, because of that very warning, but at the same time, this was an enormous blast. There are apartments that had windows blown out. You know, the people that were in that area were not safe, right. in a massive explosion like this, right?
Right. Just because you put out a message beforehand, evacuate, doesn't mean it was a safe thing to do in any way, shape, or form. And so it is an intentional act by the information that is there now. And remember, any type of investigation, you let the evidence take you where it takes you. Try not to jump to any type of conclusions. And this is in the very preliminary stages of this investigation itself. But now what you're going to be doing is you're going to take a look at outside information. And so one of the things that you should know is that the DHS put out a memo on December 22nd, essentially warning of a kind of an increased chatter of a religious nature, saying that there could possibly be an increase in messages of inciting violence during the holiday season.
This area must be evacuated now. All buildings. This area must be evacuated now. All buildings.